In addition to the training, the project facilitated 2 vulnerability assessments workshops where these newly acquired skills were applied for 2 World Heritage Sites in Africa, the Sukur Cultural Landscape in Nigeria, and the ruins of Kilwa Kiliswani and ruin of Songomnara in Tanzania. And one of the outcomes was the production of 2 reports that are available to download in relation to vulnerability of these 2 sites to climate change. There is a report in English and in Swahili languages. I'm not gonna go into presenting the sites, and I will let the speakers do it. I'm gonna just share my screen with you for one now. Welcome everyone. So can I ask to support me with one of my speakers who are not able to join the session? Zizi, if you can send me the link, Yoliswa, if you can send me the link by email, this will be helpful, so I can share it with my speaker, please.
Okay, Yoliswa, I'll send it to you now.
Yes, because I can't copy it from the chat actually. Thank you very much. Okay, apologies for that. So this is the website for CVI Africa project, where you can access to the training material, but also to the reports that have been developed for the 2 World Heritage Sites. And we have with us today 5 speakers. Dr. Ishanlosen Udaoa, who is an architect and former university teacher with over 20 years of experience as a heritage researcher. She's particularly interested in the nexus between heritage conservation, infrastructural development, and climate change. She was part of the team that assessed the likely impacts of the proposed multi-billion Lamu Port and Lamu Southern Sudan Ethiopia Transport Corridor project on the World Heritage Site of Lamu Old Town in Kenya. And she's currently the Vice President of ICOMOS Nigeria. We also have with us Mercy Mbogela. She is the site manager for ruins of Kilwa Kisiwani and ruins of Songomnara World Heritage Sites. She is doing amazing work in ensuring thorough maintenance of the sites, and she assists in building resilience and sustainability at the site level. We also have with us Simon Musazi, who didn't join the discussion yet. I need to we have some issues, but he's joining. He's working to mitigate the impacts of Rwenzori Mountains melting snow on the Konzo and other communities. He has come face to face with the effects of climate change on cultural heritage sites. As the Heritage Trust Program Manager with the Cross-Cultural Foundation of Uganda, he is heading the establishment of national trust to champion the cause for safeguarding historic and natural sites in Uganda. We have Bugumba Revocatus with us. Mr. Bugumba is the Principal Conservator of Antiquities, working with the National Museum of Tanzania based in Dar es Salaam. He has an MA Studies in Heritage Management from Athens University of Economics and Business and Kent University. He attended different courses conducted by ICOMOS and ICROM. And he has been a site manager for the ruins of Kilwa Kisiwani and the ruins of Songomnara for 13 years. And finally, we have Dr. Haruna with us. He has also some issues connected to this call, who is a university lecturer at Federal University of Kashmir. He obtained different degrees in geography, climatology, and did his PhD in climatology as well. All these speakers have been really active in during the Climate Vulnerability Index project in the 2 sites in Africa, but also Simon was a trainee, and he has been learning from the process, and all of them will share their experience with us today. So first of all, I'm just gonna ask Dr. Ishan Lawson, if she can talk us through the site of Kilwa. I have some pictures here. Thank you.
Of Sukur.
Of Sukur. Yes, of Sukur. Apologies. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Salma, and I must congratulate you for, being able to herd all of us together like this, despite all the challenges that we're currently facing with the connections. So good day to everybody, wherever you are across the world. Thank you for finding time to join us in this session. I will do this presentation very quickly in the expectation that my colleague will be able to also join us eventually. So the CVI Africa project looked at 2 World Heritage Sites in Africa. One was the Soko Cultural Landscape in Nigeria, and the second one is the Kilwa-Kisiwani World Heritage Site in Tanzania. Soko Cultural Landscape is located in the Mandara Mountains of northeast Nigeria at the border between Nigeria and Cameroon. And so the population that lives on this World Heritage Site is actually contiguous with a similar mountain population on the Cameroonian side. And currently that site is also on the Cameroonian side, it's being considered to extend the World Heritage Site to the similar site on the other side of the border. Sukur was inscribed on the World Heritage Site on the World Heritage List on account of its architecture, which is the stone-based architecture that we see on the screen. It is also notable for the intangible aspects that are related to the site, the intangible aspects of the cultural and religious, this entire landscape. The paved stone pathways are in local lore said to have been constructed by giants a long time ago. And there has been, the community has shown adaptation over the years, being located as it is on this flat plateau on the Mandara Mountains. In terms of agricultural production, they have come up with very ingenious ways of terraced agriculture, so that they're able to fend for themselves along through agriculture by farming that very that very sloped path along the mountain. Can we move on to the next slide, please? The property covers over 700 hectares, and it is surrounded by a buffer zone that is nearly twice as large. We have as we already know, that cultural heritage is the composite of both tangible and intangible heritage. And in this landscape, we see a lot of the elements that make that define the cultural heritage landscape in terms of the cultural practices, the belief systems that are associated with those the agricultural terraces, with the construction techniques, and with how the people respond to the reality of a very difficult environment. And so when we went into the CVI project, the question for us was, what would be the challenges that climate change would pose to this cultural landscape, which is not a coastal site? I mean, for coastal sites, it's very clear that we talk about rising water, rising sea levels and the rest. But for a site like this, what would be the challenges that that climate change would pose to it? As you can see on the screen, the architecture of Sukuru is particularly unique in terms of, the use of the stone. The buildings that you see there are actually, with the thatch is actually raised on top of earthen domes. So each of those thatch roofs is not raised on a wooden structure, but on a thatch dome, on an earthen dome that is raised either on circular buildings or on square buildings, which is part of the uniqueness of this site. Next slide, please. Okay. So I'll stop here okay, thank you. So during the workshop, I think we can move to the next one. During the workshop, one of the things
thank you, Ishan. Listen, we're gonna go to Simon, who's gonna present another heritage site that is not a World Heritage Site, Kororo Waterfalls. Simon, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Amazing.
Apologies with my network, but I hope you can see me.
Yes.
All right.
So could you tell us a bit more about the Kororo waterfalls and their values for communities and as a heritage site in Uganda?
Okay, thank you so much, Salma, and everyone that is on. My name is Simon Musasize. I work with the Cross Culture Foundation of Uganda. It's a non-governmental organization that works to mainstream culture and development. Unlike others, we don't run this site as an organization. We work with the stakeholders to manage this site. And again, I'll be speaking about Kololo Waterfall in the bigger context of the Rwenzori Mountains National Park, which is a World Heritage Property. So this waterfall is located in southwestern Uganda and is treasured because of its cultural significance as in conflict resolution for the Bakonjo people, who are the majority ethnic group around the Rwenzori Mountains National Park. As you notice, there are many other ethnic groups around there, but this site is more significant to this particular ethnic group. It is located along River Kabiri, which is one of the more than 50 rivers that are running down the Rwenzori Mountains National Park. And as you will see, there's been, as you notice, the Rwenzori Mountains National Park, when it was gazetted as a forest reserve in 1991 and later in 1994 as a World Heritage Property, it was gazetted more for its natural value, which were exalted, in my view, at the expense of the cultural values. So this created a little bit of disconnect between the community and then the park. And there have been a lot of activities that have been happening outside the national park that directly affects the national park. As you will notice, if we had good pictures here, there's a lot of deforestation around the hills that surround the national park. So what we are trying to do is to bring back the community by appreciating the cultural values of the national park, which is actually creating that link back of the community with the national park. So what you see in the pictures there is the waterfall, the Kololo waterfall, and you can say it's in the second tier of the buffer zone with the national park. So there are a lot of other cultural sites as you move from that site to the national park, which are directly connected to this particular waterfall. So this river is one of those that are paying the costs of climate change. There's huge boulders that come from up the mountain that threaten actually this site. As you notice that in 2012, we had unusual fires that happened within the national park. The fire that went as high as 4,000 meters above sea level, which was quite unusual because these are cold zones. And we are told by scientists that this burnt about 4,000 hectares of forests that will take a long time to recover. So the trees that used to hold back the rivers are no longer there. So the rivers are coming down with huge boulders coming down downstream. Thank you, Salma.
Thank you, Simon. I'm gonna invite Revikatus Bugumba. Bugumba, you're here to talk us through the Kilwa World Heritage Sites. Thank you, Bugumba. Could you please unmute yourself? Thank you.
Hi, Salma. Thank you for inviting me. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Revocatus, and my Salma has already introduced me. On behalf of Mercy, who has encountered some connection problem, I'm going to present about Kilwa Kisiwani and Songomnara world-related properties. As you know, Kilwa Kisiwani, Kilwa is a famous island in Tanzania that started to grow in 11th century, and it's reached its apex in 14th centuries. So it was known Kilwa, and the name Kilwa comes from we read it from Portuguese traveling accounts that say that write about Kilwa. But currently we call Kilwa Kisiwani because Kisiwani in Kiswahili is an island. So Kilwa Kisiwani is an Kilwa, the island. And Songomnara is another island almost 30 kilometers away from Kilwa Kisiwani. As I said previously, that this site grew and started to became strong mainly in 11th century to 14th century when it was dominating the trade along the East African coast, and it used to dominate that trade. And we know that it also grew to the extent that it managed to even to mint its own currency, its own currency. So it was actually a very important medieval site. It became a World Heritage Site in 1981 because of the men through under the third criteria of cultural properties that existed previously due to its history, commerce, and the architectural remains that are there. We have very important monuments that are of could say that is a very important monuments that are of its own kind, and they are not found in any part of Africa. For instance, the Great Mosque that was built between 11th century to 14th century. It's the largest mosque in Africa, Southern Sahara, before 16th centuries. And we have the Husuni Kubetsa Palace, a huge palace that was built in 14th century, and it doesn't match with any monuments in this part of Africa. As we said, it was famous in trade because it dominated the coast along the trade along the coast, and from south of Somalia to Sofala, which is in Mozambique, and to take even gold from Zimbabwe. The evidences from there is through the kilo coins that were recovered from that place. But in 2004, the site was inscribed into the endangered list because of the several challenges that were occurring there, including the sea wave erosion from coast, from ocean wave
Thank
actions.
thank you. But this is afterwards. Let's talk about the vulnerability afterwards. I just wanted the participant to know a little bit more about those sites. So Kilwa, Sukur, and the waterfalls. And we're gonna go through this discussion and discuss vulnerabilities and climate change issues slowly through the session. Thank you very much. I appreciate your support because Mercy is not available and she was the one presenting this site. So you're an amazing improviser and I appreciate that. Thank you, Bugumba. Following on our three site definitions, I would like to engage with the participants here through a whiteboard. And I would like to know whether you can share with us your perception about what is the impacts, the problems that heritage managers are the impacts of climate change on heritage sites. So I'm just gonna start a whiteboard here, and you can just write on it by text, for example, on what you think are the impacts of climate change on heritage sites and values in Africa. Wherever you're thinking about, we have just 2 minutes. So it is really a brainstorming element, but I would like to know what the participants that are with us today think climate change impacts in heritage. What's the impact? So you can just click on the text and then you can write something on the screen. You can also write on the chat if you're not able to write on the whiteboard, then they can add it to the whiteboard. So if you imagine a heritage site in your country, wherever you are, how climate change is affecting the heritage site, the communities that are linked to this heritage site, but also the heritage values. So how this heritage element is different elements from different perspectives are affected by climate change. You can do it also in all languages, of course. So as you can see on the whiteboard, we have different ranges of heritage impacts from climate change. For instance, loss of the outstanding universal value, loss of land, sea erosion, loss of biodiversity, which are all loss that are linked to losing assets, losing physical elements. But then we have also another part of it, which is loss of indigenous knowledge, loss of livelihoods, which are abstract elements of the heritage, which are values that we can hardly quantify. And it is of actually the big gap in the heritage assessment literature in relation to vulnerability is how if we lose this site, of if we lose this land, how it will affect our livelihoods and our values. Thank you very much for your contribution to this whiteboard. I'm gonna keep it here, just taking a little copy of it in the screen. And now we're gonna move on into discussing the vulnerability of the sites that have been presented earlier on to climate change. So I will ask first Bugumba. We were discussing just before in relation to Kilwa site. Can I share my screen? And we can look at, so the question here is how and why, how heritage assets, communities and values are vulnerable to climate change. And more specifically, I would like our speakers to tell us about their experience of conducting climate vulnerability assessment. So through the CVI experience, the Climate Vulnerability Index projects, or through their own experiences, and describe the vulnerability and impacts of climate change on heritage sites they are managing. Please, Bugumba. Bugumba, are you here? Apologies, we're facing technical issues. I'm gonna ask Ishan Lawson if she's available to discuss on Sukur, and we can come back to the ruins of Kilwa Kilswani when Bugumba is available.
Okay. Okay, I'm happy to do so. So our experience with Sukur, I mean, we're talking about this landscape that has an annual rainfall range between 200 and 1,000, 200 millimeters and 1,000 millimeters, and pretty high temperatures, daily high temperatures. Another thing I need to point out is that Sukur lies within the Lake Chad drainage basin, which, as we're all aware, has experienced drastic changes over the past past century. And so, as a result of this, when we started this assessment at Sukur, one of the things that we asked ourselves was, first of all, let's get an understanding of the state of affairs vis-a-vis the current climate, right? And our data sources, I think one of the biggest challenges we had, just understanding the situation and taking that knowledge to understand vulnerability, was getting the data. On one side, we had information coming in from local from people who live on the site, from the people of Sukur themselves, but then we also needed to be able to get the data in terms of the science of it. And so we had two data sets that we worked with from data stations that were approximately on the one side 60 kilometers from Sukur, and on the other side from Maiduguri. We got that, I think that was like over 100 kilometers from Sukur. And so we had to correlate the data. An interesting aspect of carrying out this event, of this activity, was we could not do it without the community. The community that lives on that site was critical to understanding how vulnerable that site is to climate change. And so through the science and the lived experience, we were able to identify the three stresses at the site. The three stresses to vulnerability at the site that affect not just the tangible, but also the intangible aspects of the site. I'll go further to explain a bit about that. First of all, drought. The people explained to us that they are experiencing more and more drought, more frequent droughts, and they last longer. And so this is also having an impact on their livelihoods and their ability to also sustain agriculture on the site. The temperature trends are on the uptick. We still expect at the national level to do further, so carry out some further work on that to get a better understanding of how much the variations in terms of temperatures are impacting on the site, because ultimately it results in storm intensity, higher storm intensity and frequency. In fact, this last September, even though our project closed earlier this year, this last September, we got pictures from the site about some very intense rainfalls that have led to gully erosion. You'll see some of those pictures later. And so through the assessment, first of all, on the climate element, we looked at what would be the potential impact on economic, social, and cultural aspects. We were thinking, for those of us that come from outside the site, our first thing is that, oh, the site is in danger, or whatever. And the community says, yes, the impact is moderate in some cases, and it's high on things like the economic aspects, because this site has experienced also great population growth in the past few years. As we see a decrease in child and maternal mortality, as we see a decrease in those things, we're also seeing an increase in population. And so there is that pressure on the site's natural resources that could also affect economic aspects. The community and the whole workshop with the community's very strong input was able to assess that there is a moderate ability to mitigate these impacts, and thus the risk to the outstanding universal value of the site is low. And they also assess that the risk to themselves is low, to themselves as a community is also low, because of their resilience and their ability to adapt to this situation. And so I'll stop there for now, Salma, and hand over to you. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I mentioned earlier about the pictures, about the flooding. Now, this flooding took place. Now, let's recall that Sukri is at over 1,000 meters above sea level, right? So this flooding is all the water coming down from the hill into the adjoining buffer zone. And I think the next slide will show us some of the damage that was done by this rain. This was on 22nd September. Sorry, not 22nd September. I think it was just last week. Today's the 19th.
Yeah, I just wanted to invite and welcome Dr. Haruna Audu Omar, who's also have been working on the Sukur project and who sent me all these pictures. So if you have any comments in relation to the pictures, Haruna, please let us know. Are you able? Are you connected? We can't hear you. We are dealing with a lot of internet issues, but this is the reality of a lot of places in Africa. It is really difficult to be doing online workshop, and it just gives you also an impression of the difficulties that are facing managers working in heritage sites that are really far away sometimes from cities, and for whom the connection is not always available. And I'm gonna ask Ishan Lawson to come back to the discussion because we can't hear Dr. Haruna. Apologies about that.
Okay. So I was just going to, no worries, there's no worries. So just these pictures show some of the damage that have taken place in the past week from torrential rains that have fallen. And so the drainage has happened down the mountain and into the buffer zone. And so you've had houses that have been destroyed. Keeping in mind that this site faced insurgency attacks back in 2014. But the risk to it from climate change, I think, might be actually higher, because it's not about a specific targeting. It happens all over a particular landscape. And so we see now that people are faced with the reality that they have to rebuild. They have lost property. And so how do they, adapt in the face of all of that? These are some of the challenges that we will have to be able to think through, because also it also means that the agricultural terraces may have been damaged in one form or the other. This is something that we will have to be in contact with the community to find out about the situation of their agricultural terraces and the impact, if any, on harvests this year. I'll hand back to you, Salma. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ishan. I want to welcome Mercy that finally could join us in the chat. Mercy, are you here? We can't hear you.
Should be there.
Amazing. Hi. Welcome, Mercy. I'm really happy that you could make it. Could you walk us through and discuss with us the vulnerability of Kilwa sites to climate change? And also, if you can share with us the experience of doing the climate vulnerability index and the vulnerability of the site to climate change. Thank you, Mercy, and welcome. I'm really happy that you can make it.
Okay, thank you, Salma. Hi, everyone. I've tried to explain a little bit about ruins of Kilwa Kisiwani and the ruins of Songomnala, as Bugumba already explained about historical background of Kilwa. To summary, Kilwa Kisiwani and Songomnala is an archaeological and historical site, which dates back from 9th to 19th century. Inside, there are a lot of monument structures like Fort, Malindi Mosque, Husuni Kubwa Palace, the ancient wells, small mosque, and so on. But the old monuments at inside are impacted with the climate change, as you see in the pictures. And the most things is wave action, strong wave action, and sometimes high tides among of the influential factors to the climate changes to the site, as it brought into sea erosion, as some of the monuments, especially the walls, which are located close to the monument, as you see to the previous pictures, it shows how these climate changes are impacted to our site. But the things which we did, some of the mitigation measures, so almost to reduce, as you see these pictures, it shows how climate changes are impacted to the site. Some of the monuments, the walls are eroded, the damage, like that's one destruction on site because of the impact of climate changes. So the mitigation measures we took so as to mitigate or to reduce the outcome of this impact, as we have tried to replant mangrove trees to the open areas where the monument are located close to the ocean. The measures we took
Mercy, excuse me, Mercy. We're gonna talk about the adaptation later on. I just wanted to discuss the vulnerability of the sites for now, and we're gonna come back to the adaptation later on the discussion. Okay, I'm gonna just ask Bugumba, thank you very much for the description. I would like to ask Bugumba if he has anything to add in the process of climate vulnerability assessment for Kilwa Kisiwani, and how did the CVI project added elements to the management of climate change impact.
Okay.
Just Bugumba, are you with us? So because I'm not able to reach out my speaker here, we're gonna move to another site, which is Kokoro Waterfalls. Simon, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. So could you share with us your experience working in the vulnerability of these heritage sites and how the communities and the people have been affected by climate change?
Okay, thank you so much, Salma. Again, I need to say that the focus of our training was on Sukuru and Kira, but I was able to test the CVI tools on the Rwenzori Mountains National Park. And I will say that the climate stressor that we were able to identify.
I couldn't follow well because, yeah.
Oh, apologies, Bugumba. We're gonna just let Simon continue and we're gonna come back to Kilwa.
Hello.
Simon, please continue. Apologies.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Salma. I was saying I was able to test the CVI tools on the Rwenzori Mountains National Park as part of the training. But yes, the emphasis, as it has been highlighted, was on Sukuru and Kira. It wasn't on the Rwenzori Mountains National Park. So we were able to identify the climate stressors for this region as being the temperature trend. We are all aware that the temperatures around this area are increasing every day. And this has had a significant impact on the other stressor now, which is the snow cover change, which has reduced from 7.5 square kilometers to now less than 1.5. And again, we will see how that impacts on the community. So that brings us to the third stressor, which is the flooding. This has had a great impact on the water bodies. The rivers that are running down this mountain are now having larger volumes. I think I've had people say that the Lake Victoria right now is the only lake that is increasing in size and volume compared to other lakes around the region. And that is quite interesting. As we live in the Lake Victoria Basin and all these rivers, most of them are supplying this Lake Victoria. So we are witnessing, if you had to speak about the OUV of the national park, the impact is high. We know why the Rwenzori Mountains was inscribed for its, for example, outstanding stunning views of the glaciers. But if they're reducing in terms of size, then we have to think twice if the tourists will be able again to come and be interested in this site. Of course, the flora and fauna also has a big impact. We are seeing endemic flora and fauna of this region being affected as the temperatures rise and the snow melts. But in terms of the impact on culture, we are seeing changes in settlement patterns. As you see, the people around this region are much connected to water bodies. But now with these distractions that are happening, we are seeing people moving away from the water bodies, moving further away from the water bodies. And this has had a huge impact on their heritage, especially the intangible heritage. For example, the people that we call the Bakonjo, actually their cultural institution is known as Obusinga Warenzuru Cultural Institution. Nzururu actually means snow, but if the snow disappears, I don't know what that, it will leave them the same way, especially even with the naming tradition we have. I think they have one of the most unique naming tradition where you are named according to the stage in your birth. If you're first born, second born, or third born, and some of these names are connected to the water bodies, but also with now the call on to reduce on the number of kids being born because of the population pressure is also having impact on their naming tradition. We have also seen a loss of medicinal plants. Many of these riverbanks are known to be special places for important medicinal plants. And most of these have been washed away as these rivers are swept away. As some people have mentioned already, there is loss of traditional knowledge, especially in craft making, making of musical instruments. All these have been impacted. But also, as to note, this region is a water catchment area for not only Uganda, but across the border to Democratic Republic of Congo. The rivers, I mean, the mountain, as we say, it sustains about 50 rivers, and some of these flow into the lakes that we know around. But the most important one is Lake Albert, where the Nile actually joins, flowing into the upper north of Africa. So if Rwenzori is actually one of the source of waters of the River Nile, then it's going to affect several people going upstream. Yes, we are experiencing floods and droughts in equal measure, and science are actually explaining some of these things as the temperature has increased, the atmosphere is capable of holding on the hot air for long, and then releases it at once with tremendous impact on the community.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you very much for sharing with us how changes in snow, in water flows can affect not only the natural environment, but also the cultural values that people, indigenous communities and local communities have created with their environments. And how sometimes, in my experience as well, working with an indigenous community in the Parc National du Bon d'Arguin in Mauritania, changes and erosion, coastal erosion, and changes in small areas and in small elements of the natural environment can affect hugely the culture of indigenous communities, because they are so linked to some specific patterns. And when there are changes of those patterns, there is a change that is never have happened before for a lot of the communities. So thank you very much for sharing, and I'm gonna give, stop the sharing, and would like to ask you from your experience of doing the climate vulnerability index. So doing this assessment that is going one element by element for looking at the vulnerability of the OUV and looking for the vulnerability of the local knowledge. What were, as trainees, but also as project managers during the CVI projects, what was your main learning about conducting the vulnerability assessment process in World Heritage Sites, but as Simon did as well, taking this learning and doing it for a site you are managing? I would ask Ishan Lawson to start. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Selma. Well, I would just want to ask, if you permit me, I don't know if Dr. Haruna is able to speak up. I'd like to give him, the opportunity to contribute his experience, and then if then I can come in if necessary. Yeah.
Thank you.
Dr. Haruna, are you able to come in? Okay, he might still be having some connection issues. Okay, so very quickly, we got, Dr. Haruna, please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry for connecting late. It's connectivity problem that I have to even use my handset on it instead of the laptop. So actually on the Sukkur, what we did was to do a follow-up to the 3 stressors that were discovered during the workshop, to keep monitoring to see, is it really what is happening or there are changes? So what we did this year, looking at what happened from the pictures from the slide shared, we saw how the area was ravaged by floods and erosion, which has never occurred in such magnitude in that environment. What actually happened, what we are experiencing in most of West African countries today is the effect of La Nina, which has never occurred now. It is occurring for at least 3 consecutive years. Now, the effect of La Nina is to bring much rainfall in such area. But during the workshop, what we discovered as some of the stressors was drought. So the issue of flooding, intense rainfall, is variable from one year to another. So what we saw in this particular year have exceeded what was discovered during the workshop, because at this particular time, the rainfall intensity is high. That was why most of the farmland were washed away. Buildings were collapsing in the top Sukkur. The flooding occurred at the buffer area, that is the lower part of the Sukkur, while the collapsed building you saw in the slide was at the top heritage site. So these are some of the things that we during the follow-up of this year to see. Is that intensity of rainfall, is it increasing or decreasing? Drought. The issue of drought led the people of that community to go into planting of early maturing crops from their own initial type of crops that they plant, because there is shortage in terms, there is shortage in the length of the rainy season, because there is shifts in the onset of the rain. And then the cessation has also drawn back, thereby compressing the length of growing season. The option for them to enable them to have what they will live on is to look for early maturing crops to plant. And that is one of the resilience methods being adopted. Also, we saw in the slide the paved way, and then the other road that was not paved. The paved road was what those people did in order to see that erosion that comes from the downhill did not wash away the road. But the area where there is no paved road, thank you very much. For those areas, the areas, all these ones are all erosion that has taken place. But if we are able to see the slide of the paved way, we'll see it is intact. And this was done a long time ago, not now. That particular was done a long time ago, not now. The slide you are seeing now, this particular slide is the one at the top Sukkur, that is, we call it Sukkur Sama. And also, these are some of the effects of the intense rainfall within August and September. All that you are seeing, it is gradual, it started gradually, but for this year, it was so intense. If you look at the first slide by my left, is how the rain washed away the crops. Yeah, wash away the crops, destroy the farmland, now leaving the people with nothing or less. The second slide we are seeing there is a road that people used to pass, and that road was not paved with stone. So thereby, due to continuous erosion and intense rainfall, led to the washing away, developing gullies. And if it is not checked, if it continues in this way, it will now develop into a deep gully and even into a river. You can see even the third slide, the fourth slide, the last slide there you are seeing is, it started like this particular one. It started like this particular one, but now look at how it has gone. What you are seeing there are some of their crops that it was initially farmland, but now it has been washed away. So on interview with the people, and what was the major, some of the measures that they are taking to check out this, there is a particular grass. Maybe you can help me with the slides, because I can't show.
Yeah, Dr. Haruna, I'm just because we've been already discussing this earlier on, and I would like to just come back into knowing what's during, because you participated as well in the CVI project. I would like to know the learnings, you know, in working with communities and also working with heritage managers, because the CVI created the possibility for different stakeholders to work together. And they would like to know, if you can express what's the main learning, you know, in conducting a vulnerability assessment that is not just done by some elements, but trying to include different stakeholders.
For the learning.
Exactly.
The learning from during the CVI workshop.
Exactly.
Yeah. What prompted, that was what even prompted to see, because if you're talking of a CVI, you will need some elements of the weather for you now to get the data to conduct such a research. So what we did, the first thing we did with other stakeholders was to see how we can have a weather station installed on the Sukul mountain so that data can be collected. And now, as I'm talking to you, we are in touch with the person collecting the data to see the trends of what is happening up there in Sukul. Is it actually what we learn in the workshop, or there are changes in that?
Thank you, Dr. Haruna. I would like to ask Simon as well if he can share with us what was his main learning from conducting the CVI vulnerability workshops.
Okay, thank you so much, Salma. So for me, I'll mention one special aspect, I think, for CVI. That special aspect is the spatial property value that this tool introduces. To me, I think it was really an important tool in terms of investigating in detail the impact of climate change on other values of the property. So for Renzori, we were able to look at the
Could you describe those the process of local values? So what do you mean exactly by local values, and what was the process of collecting those values?
Okay. So like I had said earlier, because the Renzori Mountains National Park is inscribed as a natural site, so the cultural values are not well emphasized. So with this spatial property value that looks at the other values of the Renzori Mountains National Park, I was able, I can't say we were able to do it because I was doing it remotely, to look at the other aspects of this region that makes it special. So in terms of looking at the historic value of this property, the spiritual value, the social value, those elements that connect the community with the park. We were able to document, as an organization, to document cultural heritage sites within the national park, but also outside the national park that have cultural values to the community. And one of them is that Exara Chakololo sacred site, and how is it connected to the park. So in doing that, you are able to engage the community, so they tell the significance of these sites and the relationship with the park. So it draws them back into the conservation of the national park.
Thank you very much, Simon. Bugumba, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, I could hear you now. Yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
Could you share with us in relation to your work with Mercy in Kilwa, What was
Yes.
the learnings from conducting the climate vulnerability index, working with climate scientists, working with the communities, and working with heritage managers, and having different aspects put together? What was the main learning for you as a heritage manager?
My experience in this training actually is hugely related to the multidisciplinarity, how you could work together and come out with some reliable solutions. As you know, for instance, we engage people who are dealing with climate change. We could be able to learn some trends about climate changes in Kilwa that are happening and will happen in the future. So it's a new learning for me, and the way we could engage also other scientists like the engineers who deals with construction, heavy engineering works, like Professor Richmond, who did some research on Kilokiswan about the what are the challenges there and what are the future effects of those sea wave erosions and the solution towards it. So it was a real good to learn which solution do we need for the site. And for the local community, which was able to, when we engaged them, we made to learn about some of the solutions, particularly in combating the stressors, particularly those related to precipitation, such as how to reduce the gullies by building some like walls or building some protective walls along the coast. So it's their knowledge that people do have in that area.
Thank you very much.
And in the other hand, through that, I learned that we could use this kind of learning to write our what we call the state of conservation reports. As you know, the state of conservation reports was mainly tied to the standing monuments and sites, but this approach goes as far engaging other values outside that. And I knew that those related values, they do add value to the OUV. So the impacting them also, they could assist in removing those the outstanding universal values. So the other values and the universal value are actually related. So even our future conservation, set of conservation reports should also not only be tied to the questions that are asked by UNESCO, but they should also engage other things that really do impact the OUV.
Thank you, Bugumba. Mercy, do you have anything you would like to add to that? We're gonna Ishan Losen, do you have anything to add to what Bugumba, Simon, and Dr. Haruna shared with us?
Okay, just very quickly, I think one of the things for me regarding this exercise was, and I think Bugumba has mentioned this, is the need to have a multi-stakeholder approach. When we're doing climate and heritage, we're striding two communities of practice: the climate sector and the heritage sector, and we have to speak a language that we both understand. When we take our jargons from climate and make sure that the person from heritage understands it, and vice versa. And so for us in Nigeria, dealing with this was critical from that perspective, to bring together people in academia, somebody like Dr. Haruna, who has a background in climate change, and then he also has a background as a university teacher. And one our local partners, the American University of Nigeria, bringing together the federal and state authorities are responsible for the environment was also important for us, as well as most critically in this particular situation with Sukur, the site managers, because as a World Heritage Site, it is a co-management between the National Heritage Institution, which is the National Commission for Museums and Monuments, and the community, which lived on that site well before it was ever a World Heritage Site, and whose knowledge is indispensable for managing the site effectively. And so on that note about the local communities, carrying out a climate vulnerability assessment cannot be effective if the people who have the lived experience and who are able to respond to the issues that they have to live with, that they have to grapple with on an almost daily or yearly basis, as the case may be, are not part of that conversation. It is important that they're part of the conversation. It should not just be a purely expert or academic exercise, but one that seeks to also open the door for local communities to be part of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishanlos, and thank you for summarizing all these points discussed in such a graceful way and concise way. I would like to invite our participants to respond to a poll that will be shared on a link on the chat in relation to what do you think are the challenges of heritage managers in relation to managing heritage sites in the climate change context. So I will be grateful for you if you can respond to the poll. Zizi, if you can please share it with our participants. Thank you very much. We're going to continue our discussion in relation to what can be done. We have assessed the vulnerability. We try to do it in a holistic, mindful, and fair way by including as many stakeholders we could in relation to our thank you. I think we can share the poll at the end so people can do it, and we can share it later on if that's all right. Thank you, Zizi. We can share it at the end of the session. So in relation to adaptation, so what can heritage managers do, and how can they do it, and what kind of support they need going forwards to adaptation? I see that Mercy is back with us. So I would like to know a little bit more about what were the adaptation responses. So following doing this vulnerability assessment in Kiswani and understanding different vulnerabilities to climate change, how managers on sites are responding either reactively or with preparation to climate change impact. I have some pictures I'm going to share with you, and I give the hand to Mercy.
Okay, thank you, dear Salma. So I want to explain a little bit what we already do, or the mitigation measures we took so as to reduce some of the impact which facing our site. One of the mitigation measures, first of all, we collaborate with the local communities to the replantation of mangrove trees. As you see in the picture, this is a program we did in May during African World Heritage Day. As in Tanzania, the day was celebrated in Kilwa Kisiwani and Songomnala at a national level. So we use this event to collaborate with the local community and the people we invite from different regions who came to celebrate with us, so as to plant mangrove trees to the open areas. As you see, people who are standing, close to these pictures where we put the seed of mangrove trees. This is among of the open areas at a site which lack mangrove trees. So at a time the wave action goes, it means that it goes directly to the wall because no mangrove trees. So we have tried to plant mangrove trees so as the wave action can go to the mangrove. So mangrove trees will act as the things which can reduce the wave action to go directly to the wall. But another things which we, as a measures we took is construction of gabion wall. Last years, we constructed a gabion wall at Husuni Kubwa Palace. Can you show us the picture, Sama? We have tried to construct a gabion wall at Husuni Kubwa Palace. Husuni Kubwa is among of the palace which we have at Kilwa Kisiwani, one of the historic building we have. So one of the impact in the palace is destruction of the wall, same because of the impact of climate change. So in order to reduce or to mitigate this impact, we have tried to construct the gabion wall close to the Husuni Kubwa Palace as a means of reducing the outcome of the impact of the climate changes. So we continue to take this kind of measures and the others which the people will share with us so as to reduce the impact of climate change in site. Thank you.
Thank you, Mercy. It's really interesting to see that when managing World Heritage Sites, even if they are cultural heritage sites, sometimes we need to go back to nature and to provide ecosystem-based solution to protect cultural heritage sites. And I think this is a reminder that this separation between cultural and natural doesn't exist really, and that in our management, in our future responses to thinking about a problem, we need to bring them back together, bring in the cultural and the natural side together, and try to see how both elements of the sites, of its values, and also the communities, the parts, like the human parts of the site together in responding. I'm going to ask Simon to jump in and share with us their responses in the Kororo waterfalls. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Mercy.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you so much, Salma. Well, for us, our starting point was the documentation that we are doing. So we documented the sites, and some of them were able to put up information boards and signposts to further highlight the significance. Some of those you won't be able to see in the pictures, but those are some of the things we were able to do. But we also found that deforestation is actually embedded in the traditional systems of these communities. Communities were able to identify species of trees that can be planted that can hold back the floods. What you see in the down there, the man, what is holding there is the bamboo. Bamboo has been identified by the community as one of those very strong tree species that can be able to hold the rivers, not to be able to explode. But we also were able to see that other things like, for example, ritual cleansing of the ridges and water confluences, which are done by the communities, they're not just done because there are cultural things to be done, but we found that the actual way of raising awareness to the community that we have a problem and then we need to address it. So we were able to do some of these rituals with the community, and it played a great role in the community understanding the impact of climate change on their heritage. But we were also able to collaborate with our friends in the UK. What you see on your left is what they call the Leaker Dam. That was our first Leaker Dam to be done in Uganda, we can say. So the purpose of this Leaker Dam is to slow down the movement of the river so that water is able to circulate within the ground. We are still monitoring to see how that will work. I mean, we experimented it on a small river to see how that works. The other things that we found very important are the taboos that are associated with the heritage sites. That is two pictures of the community trying to prepare seedlings. They have a nursery bed where they prepare those traditional, species of trees which are rare to find today. So we have provided them with a nursery where they can be able to create as many seedlings as possible. But we also were able to, in our documentation, to highlight the issue of the taboos that are associated with things, for example, like water bodies, forests, and so on, so that this information is further shared with the communities to be able to appreciate how the for our grandparents used to observe and preserve the environment. I think in summary, that is what we were able to do.
Thank you, Simon. It's really inspiring to see the work with local communities in empowering them in responding to the challenges they are facing. Because there is another aspect, to climate change affecting your livelihood, in terms of your mental health, your connection to the people you live with. And I think when you feel that you are empowered in responding to what's happening to you, and understanding, having this kind of understanding of this heritage site is affected like that, and I'm understanding what's happening around me so I can respond to it, is an incredible power give back to the heritage communities and heritage managers. I would like to invite Dr. Haruna to share with us their adaptation responses in relation to the Sukur World Heritage Site.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, in the Sukur community, because that area is actually affected by climate change. And there is also a variability of rainfall in that community. So that led to one of the measures for them to take in order to have the crops that they will manage their life is by planting early maturing crops in the area, because there is shortening of the length of growing season due to the drought. So what they do is to look for early maturing crops to plant. Another way in which they adapt to that particular environment is the type of agriculture they practice, that is the terracing agriculture across the slope. Because people that live on top of the plateau where the palace of the Hidi is, they practice this terracing. If you look across their slope, what they do is to use stone to terrace so that it will reduce the erosion in that particular area. Another method, most of those methods, because the people there are agrarian, they are agricultural, their dominant practice there is agriculture. So another thing they do is to plant cover crops, because cover crops have the ability to reduce the impact of rain directly on the soil. Because if the rain impacted directly on the soil, it will make the soil to lose and thereby moving it down the slope. And if they don't plant these cover crops, as time goes on, most of the nutrients, which are normally within the topsoil between 0 to 5 cm, will be washed downwards. Another method of interest is the planting of Bahama grass. I was discussing recently with one of the elders at Sukur. He told me that they are planting this Bahama grass because this Bahama grass has the ability, the root has a deep root system. So the root will go down, thereby when water comes, it cannot easily wash it away. Another method they adopt in Sukur is, you see, because of the high population in that Sukur, now most of the areas are being cultivated agriculturally so that they will have the food to feed the community. And most of their children that were used to go a long distance to fetch, that is in terms of touching the roof of their house, which was the ancient way, or which is the ancient building in that particular area. But now it has changed to using corroded zinc in order, because those starch materials, because of the drought, to get those starch materials becomes so difficult, and they cannot leave their building to collapse. All they need to do now is to now start adapting that zinc to roof their homes. So these are some of the adaptation that I saw or in Sukur.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Haruna. And it is incredible to hear from you, you know, as a scientist who's been working in the climate literature and climate change research, how the indigenous local knowledge sometimes have value that sometimes we can't find when we are not locally integrated with the site. So for example, knowing about this specific plant that can actually have support and decrease erosion processes. And this is a reminder of how the heritage sector can actually bridge and create a link between scientific knowledge, indigenous knowledge, and local knowledge, which sometimes in other sectors, the scientific knowledge is most of the time dealing and taking over all other knowledges and sources of knowledges. So it is really nice to witness this kind of processes. I would like to thank all the speakers who has been with us today for, you know, being here and challenging moments, you know, of connection and trying their best to be here with us. I would like to open the ground floor for 5 minutes for questions. Apologies, it took a little bit longer than expected, but if you have any questions, please share them in the chat or share them with us directly. And also I would like to ask Zizi if she could share the poll with us. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I'll read them through to our speakers, or please just put your hand up and we can give you a space to talk. Thank you very much. Okay, so we didn't have much participation in the poll. However, two of the main challenges that were said here is literacy and knowledge about climate change and integration of different knowledge systems. It's good to remind our speakers and our participants that when they were working on the Sukur, when they were working on the Kilwa, I think there were issues in translating it into Swahili. So they wanted to do the report in Swahili, and sometimes it was really challenging to find some climate-related word in Swahili, and they had to contact ministries, and this is what Bugumba shared with me earlier in relation to finding the appropriate words to discuss. Thank you, Zizi. That's good. Rebecca, would you like to speak up?
Okay, hi, Salma.
Hi, Rebecca.
Okay, I just wanted to thank the presenters. I wanted to ask Mercy a question, but I wrongly entered the enter button before I asked my question. I wanted to ask how easy was it to establish the mangrove trees when they were planting them?
Rebecca, can you ask again your question?
Okay, I'm saying how easy was it to establish the mangrove trees when we're planting them? Were they easy to plant?
Of course, the activity is, I can say it's not easy or difficult, but it needs you to be careful and close. Almost it takes 3 months to make sure that you succeed to replant mangrove trees, because some of the seeds we found close to the site, but to some extent there is some location where we wanted to replant mangrove trees, but the soil, it cannot match with the seed which are found there. So it needs us to find the seeds far from the site so that it can meet or it can match the soil which found there. So,
thank you, Mercy.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Maybe I should add.
We need to end the session, unfortunately. But Rebecca, could you send us your email and we can maybe come back to you with a more complete answer? Would that be all right?
Okay, so I should type it on this chat.
Yeah, you can just tap it, and I'll put you in contact with Gugumba and Mercy.
Okay.
Thank you. We will collect all the information and the most important elements of this chat and share them with Michelle and the group, the organizers here, to be shared at the COP27. They would like to give space now to Michelle to conclude this session. Thank you very much for all our speakers and for all the participants. We really appreciate your presence and you being here listening to our stories and our experiences in heritage and climate change management. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Salma, and thank you to all the speakers for sharing your very valuable knowledge on this area. It has been really insightful to learn about this and hear what's being done, and especially around community involvement. I'm going to end the session now, and I just want to let you know that there's a new session that's starting that's going to be on climate actions for sustainable food security. So when you leave this session, you'll need to go back to the lobby and then click on the join session. I do have to say, however, that it seems that I know that the Moyos District Farmers Association has had some technical difficulties. So it might be that they aren't able to hold that session. And I want to say thank you to the speakers and to Salma for persevering through the connectivity issues that we've had for this session. So I'm going to leave and go and welcome to the other session. And I just want to say thank you, and thank you for being part of the Africa Resilience Hub.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Salma.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Salma.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
You were amazing.
Thank you.